Yeah, thank you for joining, everyone. I am very honored to have my old client, Kahil Malani in Tokyo, joining us today to walk us through a little bit of an insight, not very specifically in Coca-Cola, because there are certain NDA involved in that, but Kahil is able to share with us like a lot of the great experience that he has built up in the industry for many years. So a little bit of background of Kahil. He's currently the head of data and digital with Coca-Cola Bottlers Japan. He's going to explain a little bit what's the difference between Coca-Cola and Coca-Cola Bottlers later on. But when I met him, he was like the head of digital with My Stays Hotel Management in Japan. And before that, he has a lot of experience in digital already, including Mindshare and EF Educations. So before we start about a conversations, getting some of the wisdom from Hill, I just want to recap a little bit, introducing who's ADA. ADA, we are a Asia-focused agencies. We call ourselves as the Integrated Growth Partners. We have 1,400 people around the data analytics, customer experience, performance marketing, and all that. We are part of the Asiata Group. And Asiata Group has 6 different telco that we invested, including in Malaysia. We have Celcom, XL Asiata in Indonesia. We also are very glad to have an investment from SoftBank and Sumitomo. So it's great like to have some insight link up from Japan today from Cahill. So we have a lot of customers across the different space. So today we'll focus to talk a little bit more around the FMCG, the retail space, right? So hopefully the audience is going to get some idea like what things they should do differently potentially. We have done a lot of award in the industry, and all we do is to focus around sales and marketing, right, across the funnel. So later on, we're just going to go through using the different technology, maybe generative AI, how this kind of an enabler is going to help you as a company to engage the customers across these different stages, right, across the funnel. So before, like, again, I start the sessions, I just want everyone to sink in and think a little bit about where do you see yourself in terms of a digital maturity itself. This is like a digital maturity model from BCG, Boston Consulting Group. It's basically classify any organization across 4 dimensions around whether you have ability to do data-driven targeting, how you automate like the activation to engage the customers, are you able to measure the success and attribute back to the channels, and how internally as an organization you'll be able to collaborate. And the 4 stages of the maturity are the nascent, which is like the beginning, emerging, connected, and to the multi-moment, right? So I want you to think about like where you are and potentially like why you see yourself sitting at those stages. If you take a look of like the industry, so hopefully most of the audience here joining today will be sitting with the retail or consumer products, but we know that there may be audience like joining from different industry as well. So this is just to give you a little bit idea back, this is like a few years ago, how the industry see themselves across the maturity. Again, the question back to you is like, where do you think you are, right? So BCG also is quite interesting to talk about like there are 6 enablers, 6 areas what a company want to look at. In the middle part, there are core capability, including the data part, right? Do you have the data sets? How you connect the various data silo to have like a holistic understanding of the business, of the customer, of the product? Do you have the way to automate the engagement with the audience? And how are you be able to measure itself and make those data actionable? Around that, there are 3 particular capabilities that you need to build. Do you have like a agile teaming and fail fast culture, such that like nowadays we talk about like the growth mindset, right? Which means that you don't know what you don't know. So you are growing. So you're going into areas that you have no experience, like whether it's right or wrong. But then so you are brave enough to try, right? And when you fail fast and you come up again to have a resilience and to move forward. In order for you to have maybe a little bit less failure, maybe to do something faster or maybe feel a little bit more efficient, you might want to have a specialist skill, right? Do you have the in-house capability, or do you need to go out? And do you have the strategic partnership with one of some of the technology enablers to help you to be successful? That's the frame that I want to set to the scenes, right? And now let's just go start and have a chat with Cahill. So, Cahill, maybe I'll just elaborate a little bit more. Like the back, I talk about like Cahill's background, but Cahill is leading the charge of digital transformation right now at Coca-Cola Bottlers Japan. He has been instrumental in implementing a data-centric approach in the Japanese context, and also he's like recently doing a lot of work around the generative AI. His entrepreneur origin and commitment to novel solution make him a unique voice in the generative AI space. As he shares his experience at the Generative AI Summit, audience can also look forward to gaining some valuable insight into evolving the AI in the business and how adoption can happen in a risk-averse environment. So we will talk about the generative AI and all that good stuff. But before that, let's just start, right, Cahill? Tell us a little bit, like, what's the difference between Coca-Cola and Coca-Cola bottler? Because like to me, it's just like Coca-Cola. But what's the difference?
Well, thank you, Anthony, for the opportunity of talking here and meeting all of you. The difference is basically that we are part of one big system. As you can imagine, to cover the needs of billions of people who drink Coca-Cola products on a daily basis, it's very complex to have the reach on the local regions just for one company. So Coca-Cola came up with this partnership with the local, basically, institutions and companies that called bottlers. They initially kind of like take the role of producing the product, but little by little they expanded their role in more commercialization, merchandising, and overall revenue growth management, so that they really cater to the need of the local markets. So it's really a partnership between local enterprises and Coca-Cola, the company, in some sort of franchise deal where we, of course, pay some royalties to Coca-Cola while we operate under the brand and basically help the brand grow internationally. In the case of Coca-Cola Bottler Japan, is one of the largest bottlers in the world, is the #1 in Japan. There are like a few of us left, but basically Coca-Cola Bottler covers almost 90% of the market, and we sell billions of bottles every year. We also own 800,000 vending machines, which makes us the largest vending machine operator in the world as well. So that's kind of like the difference. And between like each region and kind of like grouping, you would find different types of bottlers that have different routes depending on their origin. So we are an independent company. We are listed in Tokyo Stock Exchange. So you can learn more about us by searching about us, but we are still with our sister company, Coca-Cola Japan Corporation, which is the arm of Coca-Cola here in Japan, in a close partnership. And together we grow the market and answer the needs of the shoppers and the customers here.
Right. Okay. So from a marketing perspective, like what is there any particular focus? Like is the Coca-Cola as an overarching the brand control, and then like you doing something maybe down the funnel? Is it like how it worked from a marketing perspective?
In general, yes. So we do cover all the BTL while the brand basically cover all the ATL and brand marketing. That being said, it's really a collaborative effort. We have like a joint kind of like functions, either in revenue growth management or in launching new products, marketing it and working together and growing it, and also launching digital products as well and initiatives, so that it is well articulated and it comes to the market in the way that the consumer expect or sometimes surprise them in a positive way. So that's how I say it's more a partnership than like just we divide things in silos.
Right. So maybe can you elaborate a little bit like within like the BTL, what kind of
Mm-hmm.
BTLs you guys would be responsible for?
Sure. I mean, imagine you have a footprint of a couple of 100,000 stores around the country. You need to do all the merchandising, the approach to the customers, the convincing, negotiations. All that is done by us, and then you need to do the local activation, like in store. So that's as well is done by Coca-Cola Bottlers Japan. It's moving more and more in digital media, as you can imagine. There is a more a crossover as we go into a digital world with Amazon and all basically the marketplaces that are growing, but also food service aggregators like Uber Eats, the Mycan. So all this kind of like comes in as BTL, but still we have a collaborative effort with our partners at Coca-Cola so that we come up with one articulated strategy so that all the TV media or large campaigns on digital are coordinated with the promotions, coupons, buy one get one free that we do with different customers, with being convenience stores or supermarket direct discounters. It's really kind of very expansive, as you can imagine, at the scale that we have at Coca-Cola.
Right. So basically, there's like a broad ecosystem out there, right? As a BTL, you need to engage all of this. And I think like because like you're the head of digital and data, how do you see you as maybe not very specific in Coca-Cola bottler, but like in general in the FMCG category? Do you see the challenge collecting the data, activating on the data, right? So because a lot of the FMCG historically they go through like distributors, retailer to reach the customers. How do you see you guys like be able to do that?
Well, it all depends on the market. So in our case, modern trade constitutes the large or the largest part of the business. That being said, is very diverse here in Japan, and unlike in the US or Europe, we do have several customers like in each of the channels, like supermarkets, drug and discounters. It's like in the US, you will have like Walmart, Burger, and like a couple of big names, but here is like really a little bit more fragmented, which is positive for the consumer as they find more customized experiences and also more diversity in products. And it's also good for just the competition in the market in general. But it brings a complexity as you have more partners to cover and you have basically more kind of diversity on digital maturity that you were talking about. So that's really like varies from one customer to the other. And as you can imagine, Japan has been going through this transformation at maybe slower pace until recently. So we do cater to, like very basic type of capabilities to very advanced. And in our role, data and digital team here at Coca-Cola Bottler commercial team, our role is kind of like to standardize that and bring as much coherence to the ecosystem as we can. But also our role is to understand that nothing is perfect and data is chaos and you need to manage that chaos and just take advantage of it. So it's the same for your competitors. They're living in chaos as well. The deal is like who can find the opportunity first, who can find the insight first and just capitalize on it and identify the risk before basically they materialize. That comes in with the strong collaboration, negotiation, understanding with the customer, meaning also a human presence and discussion with our customers, not only about data or about digital, is really understanding why, and that the insight is usually coming from a frank discussion that we have with our customers close to the field. Thankfully, Coca-Cola, Bottler Japan, and other bottlers that work with Coca-Cola in Japan are really engaged in that. So unlike other companies, we do have strong merchandisers and sales force account manager presence directly to our customers. That's something that is usually outsourced in the industry to third parties, but we like to keep that relationship vivid and very much alive. Of course, technology will play a role to kind of fast track that. But again, it's all about human and trust.
Right. So I think negotiating or like interacting with the customers like as a human, right, is very important. So like when you talk about like the Coca-Cola bottlers, you also mentioned on the BTL you actually own like vending machine. Maybe I just want to show the audience that you were telling me before that there is a Coca-Cola apps that I found is quite interesting. Like because like I think the vending machine as an ecosystem, while it is extremely popular in Japan, in Southeast Asia, where we're based, is not as pervasive, right, as in Japan itself. But let me just run the video and help the customers or the audience here to understand a little bit like what services that you have available. Can people hear the audio?
No, we cannot. No.
Okay. I'm actually not sure how to show the video there, but what basically this guy is like talking about the fact that he has downloaded the app, right, which is this app here, and he was like walking from his home to the vending machine. And when he walked, the app actually clocked the mileage, right, or the number of steps that he has, and then he built up like some of the point that he's now basically walk up to the vending machine, right, to do the redemption. So he tapped on that and basically say now he's qualified for 1 free drinks, and then he has a selection, and then there's a number of products that he can choose, right? And then the guy basically just like browse around, and it's very wide, right? It's not just the fizzy drink, but like Coca-Cola, Japan has like the tea and all that. So now he basically pick up like the Coke Zero, and then he swipe, and then like that particular order got connected to the vending machine, and there you go, like he got like the free drinks, right? So that's basically like the solution, right? Or like applications that you guys have done. So let me just go back to the fire. Um, so I guess like in this kind of apps, right? So is it like one of the way you would use to interact with the human and try to gather like the data point and try to see like what kind of behavior, the interest that they have, that on top of like sometimes like I've seen in our market, people will use a QR code, and then like you encourage them like to take a picture of the package, and then you interact with the product. But this is just obviously a very advanced way, right? A very gamification way to interact. Would that be right?
I'd say yes. So basically, if you know Japan, like loyalty and points are huge here. Every big retailer has one. With 800,000 vending machines, basically we are a retailer. So it's for us a channel more than like just like something that we do on the side. It's really half of our business on revenue wise. I can't disclose, of course, the numbers around the users of the app. I can tell you that it's one of the largest wallets in the country. So it's very often kind of featured by Apple Store and Android Store as part of like the payment options beside Google Pay, beside the Apple Pay, just to tell you the size of it. It's used by millions of people every month, has like 40 million downloads in total. It's quite large, and people use it for various reasons. One is to, of course, get the mileage and get free drinks as part of the experience, obviously, but also as a communication channel that we have. We broadcast campaigns, we broadcast like partnership that we have with kind of IPs, popular IPs in anime, in games, and so on and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. So all that plays a big role and will evolve in the future to more advanced capabilities. Of course, all that data comes in firsthand, which obviously can be used for better targeting, for optimization of our vending machine footprint, and bring a more profitable kind of operation overall, but also understanding our consumer needs better so that we can bring the right product to the right locations and basically notify them when there is something new, when there is like a launch of a new product. And as you mentioned earlier, in Japan, we have the largest portfolio of products in the world, period. We launch like dozens of products every year, more than all the planet together. Just like to give you a sense of how kind of like active this market is, very, very competitive. If you go to a supermarket or convenience store, you find new products almost on a weekly basis. And that's for us, that's for our competition. So of course we need to be as close as possible to the customer to understand what works and in a very fast way. That's why we built this app, and it's very successful. And we will build on top of it new capabilities and of course bring this value to our customers. retail customers in supermarkets, convenience stores, and so on, so that we integrate that experience with their existing experience, so it add value at the end for everyone.
Mm. So it's quite interesting you talk about, and I do know like the Japanese like new things, right? So it's like the pace that you talk about, how fast and how many product like you're launching, right? On weekly basis, not on monthly, quarterly basis, right? So I guess maybe I'll just jump a little bit into the generative AI because if you have to actually do such a large scale of promotion of product, how do you do it? Because like you just like in a lot of company they have very limited product they need to launch, right? And so they have like few campaign, maybe there's an evergreen and that's it. Maybe talk us through a little bit like about how you build like that scalable capabilities to support like what you just talked about is like the weekly launch of the product.
Yeah, definitely. So there are like few things we need to keep in mind. Generative AI is only good if you have a proven kind of like methodology of execution and like a reliable data set that you can leverage. So if you don't have these two, basically you will only have noise or really bad execution at the end, which is a big risk for most companies. So that's why at our scale, it's very risky to just go and blow money on generative AI. You have to do it in a very articulated, prepared way with the right pace. So I can't really disclose what everything that we are doing, but imagine you're rolling out a big B2B platform, something like that. You want that catalog to be available in multiple languages before you would basically use APIs from Google Translate and so on with very low quality that you could get out of it and with really little room of optimization for your own business. While right now you can train the models to really cater to the industry that you're working on, to the like kind of even like tone that you would like to push brand wise and so on, and could do the same thing with the POPs in stores. So this is something that will kind of accelerate as we digitalize toward like more digitalized retail media, but it should also be in the physical world where like everything is printed. It's totally fine to print things that you comes from generative AI, as long, of course, you define this guardrail so that you make sure you're not producing garbage or producing things that kind of break IP rules and these kind of things. So that's kind of the challenge big companies have to face, and the ones that move the most in a most nimbler like kind of approach, but more importantly, in a more practical approach. The point is not to win everywhere or to do very complex things, is rather to do very simple things fast and at scale. So if you do that, you're already saving time and money and basically responding faster to the needs of the consumer, which the customers again like, and then of course give you an advantage in negotiations.
Right. So if I recap like what you're saying, not necessarily you're going to win every battle. Do something like maybe small, but make it quick, right? But maybe help me to understand a little bit like
Mm.
when we talk about like the generative AI, you were saying like, okay, you cannot just jump straight to it and use it as is because the quality of the Google Translate, for example, is not fantastic, right? So this is all around like the whole content creation, correct?
Yes and no. So you could use it even like at the data level, and that's where we see most of the value. So we have a lot of databases that are scattered from
Mm.
different points that we acquire, that we buy, that we kind of like crawl, and that we build ourselves. And all this lives in silos. So without contextual kind of like um, ability to bring it or bridge it together, it's very hard to extract value of it and enrich that data or your database to work from it. So
Mm.
before we would build knowledge graphs in a very ad hoc ways, very manual kind of schema based, like you would be optimizing your data sets. And that kind of takes time. With generative AI, basically you can put a set of rules and that will help you identify, for example, the address automatically, the phone number automatically, these kind of things, and then build a common database for example, a universal master of consumers or customers, things that would have taken a long time would be accelerated with generative AI. Of course, there would be a manual QA on top of it, but ultimately that would have been already made easier with the help of these new technologies. The most important aspect of it is really statistical relevance. So before, statistical relevance was just given to numbers, but now it's given to almost any dimension. It could be like a picture, it could be color, it could be kind of like addresses and so on and so forth. So extracting value from this data becomes a lot more easier. That being said, it's not straightforward. You need to put the right processes, you need to have the right maturity. More importantly, you need to make sure that the data, the base data that you're working with, is reliable. So that cleanup, that foundation is what CPG companies are focusing right now so that they can jump to the next step.
Right. So if I again just trying to visualize for myself and maybe for our audience, so you have like a lot of or FMCG in general. So it's interestingly like a lot of time FMCG actually does not have a lot of data, but you do have a lot of data from different places. But these data are not necessarily clean in a way, right? So you need to clean them up, build it together. But you actually talk about like interesting use case on the generative AI because a lot of time I've seen company will use the generative AI to create and develop the content, but it seems like what you said is actually you build the additional data set to enhance your core data, right? So such that it
Exactly.
can be enriched.
Exactly. That's where we see the most value. Once you have that, you can create content. Creating content is not the most difficult, but okay, and doesn't add that much value and differentiate you that much if the core data is not really differentiated. So that aspect is, I believe, where companies will be investing most of their effort. Again, with risk associated, so we need to be careful of like what you're doing, where the data is coming from, the ownership of the data, so that you don't fall in the difficult situations some big companies are already facing right now when they went a bit too fast and promised the market to kind of display new capabilities. There is no reason to go that deep that fast. Again, simple is better, especially at scale of the scale of Coca-Cola. You do one right thing and it pays off in the market in a big way.
Right. So maybe let's go into a little bit of the use cases, right? So now you have the data set, you have cleaned it up, you have enriched it using generative AI. And then we want to do the activation, right? So as simple as like the traditional, like a CPG, you package up like the Coca-Cola, the whatever, like the product, like you release it on weekly basis. I guess there is like one use case, like how you want to create like a particular impression on the packaging, how you can potentially do like personalization, how you're going to do like the media optimization. So there are many different use cases, right? So again, not just talking about your company, but holistically, like FMCG, if you need to give advice, right, to the audience, which is like a $1 million questions, but like what are the top three things, right? Like you believe that now you actually have the data set and you want to actually go and activate something using your data, what are the three things that you believe that maybe just coming to your principle is like, I want to do something small and make it fast and make it scalable and to create the impact. But what are the three things that you recommend to the audience here?
I would say the three things that I would recommend is really, again, simplifying your order to cash process and overall marketing. So most companies would dream of kind of personalization that is very granular at user level. That's something that for me is kind of like a myth, that we think that everyone is different. Yes, we are all different, sure, but we're all very similar in a way. And at scale, it's a lot better to kind of like cluster people or put customers in buckets that receive a very relevant message, but general enough to cover a certain percentage that is meaningful. By doing so, you'll be able to strategically deploy campaigns in shops in a more regular fashion that is like kind of like more adapted to the consumer like footfall that they receive. That's something that so far very few companies have been able to roll out in a systematic way. It's really manual. It's really a lot of negotiation and so on. Once you establish that model and the customer accepts it as part of the negotiation, then you will be able to roll it out much faster, and everyone will make money, and everyone, more importantly, will have the data to back up to back the strategy. So you get results. So that's number one.
Mm.
Number two is really on managing the data that you receive and understanding it. So right now, you receive all the data, you have to put it in dashboards or analytics and so on, and try to make sense out of it. Data, you will be able to talk to it in a simple way. Of course, it will never replace a data analyst per se, but for simple kind of questions that you're looking for as an account manager, you would not need to go to the data team. So self-serve will be kind of facilitated as long as the database is kind of like well managed and clean, and also that you have a proof of whatever answer you receive. So, for example, the AI bot that you're using to answer your account manager regarding the difference of sales of last year versus this year for your product versus competition, uh, sometimes generative AI hallucinates. So in that case, to avoid that, you would also provide the SQL behind to prove basically the mathematical formula and the origin of the data point that proves it, so that if they want to kind of reference to the report, they just download the Excel and they can see for themselves, basically. So that facilitates the operation. More importantly, if your account manager can do it, you can provide it to the customer that are not necessarily tech savvy, and they can do it on their own data sets, very custom to their shops even. So that's a huge kind of like advancement if you're able to achieve that level of customization for customer support. The third one is really on tackling problems. And in our case, we have thousands of vending machines, we have thousands of customers, we receive a lot of complaints or just questions and so on and so forth. And so far, we have a large like customer call center that would manage this, and we have a lot of CRM capability to handle that in different ways, which is good. But a lot of these requests are usually just standard ones and not necessarily requiring a human presence every time. I'm not saying that we should replace humans, not at all. Humans should be augmented to answer better, faster, in a very relevant way. And I think that's where we are missing the dot as CPG companies or companies in general. We try to reduce costs as much as possible. Why the customer service is the most important and most direct way to kind of like shift mindset and shift perception of our consumer and customer toward our product. So that means that once you have the right data and you have basic capabilities of an AI, generative AI basically support, you will be able to provide, for example, sales proposals that are more relevant, or push basically for solutions in a personalized way faster, rather than like, like juggling between a call center like people in order to get to the right answer. So that coordination, breaking the silos, is where the value comes in, but only if the data itself is not in silos anymore.
Right. So it is quite fascinating because a lot of time, maybe just us as ADA, a lot of time when we go and talk to the customers, we talk about sales and marketing scenario. So if I recap the three key part that you talk about, like the order to cash, which is the first one, you talk about like the personalization. I guess it's like how deep is the personalization? It has to be hyper personalization to like one-to-one level is sufficient, or like you basically do a clustering approach, right? Is enough, right? But it's good for us to drive that. I think like that's a very much a sales scenario. The second part that you talk about is how you can actually democratize like the data to the people who can actually like gain the insight, right? I think from the very first beginning, you said like in order to give yourself a competitive edge, you need to be able to draw the insight faster than the others, right? So how to democratize, and also not just even within your company, is also to the selling the ecosystem, like the distributors, what kind of products sell well in a particular area, seasonality, demographics, right? Such that they can actually stock up the right item, or like maybe not stocking up like too much the other item, right? Where you can give them insight, or even like they can actually do the slice and dice by themselves, right? That's the second part. And I think the third part is really see outside the sales and marketing use cases into like a servicing use case, when you basically want to improve the productivities, right, of those the call center people, because like a lot of the time, maybe 80% of the time they spend is actually just a 20% of the complaints, right? So if you can automate that particular process using the data, right, that may be like an interesting use case that you can recommend.
Yeah, definitely. I think like the using generative AI in marketing and communication is the most obvious one, and the ones that you see us already kind of rolling out, for the simple reason because it's the easiest one to roll out and the one that basically brings revenue the fastest. Now, to do it at operational level is a lot harder, but of course the value is bigger as well. So you will see in both front, in customer facing, it's like front end and then back end, the use of these technologies and other technologies like AR and basically cybersecurity improvement using these things. All that will matter. As we digitalize further, there are risks that will appear because of international kind of like situations that can only be tackled with the help of AI. So unless you have the foundations, meaning clean data and infrastructure that is ready and the right people and the right partners as well, you will not be able to move toward the future. And basically you will be left behind.
Right. Okay. So I will go back a little bit, like so you talk about innovation. I want to ask you around the innovation, but like maybe I'll just take a step back, because this can be quite interesting in a way, like when you're in the hospitality business and now you're in the retail business, you are doing a lot of B2C, dealing with a lot of customers, and the Japanese people are super sensitive, whether you're actually tracking too much of my information, using my information to do whatever, the whole data privacies and all these kind of items, right? So how do you see the market across the industry is dealing with the data? Because like you say like you're dealing a lot of the data, but maybe talk us through a little bit like how you see people to be very pragmatic, like to deal with the data privacy. Because I also talked to some CIOs and they said, look, like we cannot touch the data because it's this PII, right? The personal identifiable information. They cannot touch it. Is it like something similar? And then how you be able to address it?
So I won't answer as Coca-Cola here, but more as my personal philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
I think first, the overall industry, especially internet advertising industry, went airy in the wrong direction, trying to gather as much personal data as possible, invading the privacy of people in a very unnecessary way, just to have a pitch to promise advertisers the most targeted ads, basically. And I think all that is really smoke screens. That's really not necessary. That's where I come back to clustering. That will come back to contextualization. That's where retail media is a lot more relevant, a lot more successful actually at proving return on investment, positive return on investment, than all these hyper targeted modes on social media and so on and so forth. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying if you look at ads on Amazon that are super relevant because you know what who pays what and who buys what, but I don't know who is the person. I don't want to know who is the person. I'm not interested if Anthony buys this or that. What I'm interested in is this group of users. That's what they would like to buy. This group of users engage with this type of promotions, and that's more scalable, especially for a company like us. We can't customize. I cannot send you a bottle that's called Anthony. It doesn't make sense. It's just not good business. It's not profitable. That's something we need to, as an industry, overall and in the communication industry, we need to make peace out of it and like really come back to the source of what good marketing is, which is serving our consumers and customers. It's not spying on them. It's not getting as much information from them. It's understanding them. So what do we need to understand them? That's where we define the data prompt and we bring it in. Second thing, once we bring it in, anonymize it. You don't need to trade personal information. Anonymize it, aggregate it, cluster it, segment it, and then you can exchange it with your customers in an efficient way. And then they will be happy. There will be other ways to bridge basically identities without really invading. I don't need to know Anthony likes this or that. I just need to know that this consumer also bought that thing in the store and he would like something similar basically online, and I need to provide him a promotion for that without knowing who is that person. So that's first aspect. Second aspect is hardware driven data kind of management. So that comes back to kind of blockchain technologies that also unfortunately has been misused and pushed in the wrong direction, where I believe that the digital identity and personal data should be primarily stored at the device level of the consumer in a personal wallet, so that I don't need to know, I don't even need to receive that data ever, but I need to know that this device under this ID, they are interested by a certain product or so interested by certain advertising. So I serve them that advertising, and then the device accepts it or not without me knowing, and that's fine. So I think that's where the journey comes in, by basically separating where the data lives and where the data is used.
Right. So would that be correct that I think if I recap what you're saying, so number one, we don't need to boil the ocean and collect every single piece of data point about the customers, right? Because it's not necessary. The second part is once you have the data set, you anonymize it, right? So and then the last part you talk about is that you want to link it back into the device level. Does it mean like when you do the engagement, you only engaging at the device level, right? It's not like I'm going to send you an email, but like I'm basically big betting on the app, right? The app linked to the device. So, but I don't know the name of the device or who you are on the device, but I know like the interest level of this device owner. As a result, like I may be pushing like certain product to the device, but you just happen to be the device owner.
That's correct. So, and I think even email itself will basically be linked like that in blockchain. So email notifications will be linked together. So it will be a coherent kind of like communication channel between, you know, your line, your notification center, and your email. They will be kind of like linked together. It's already done by, you know, Apple Connect, for example. So once you receive that, you receive kind of the same message across to make sure that you receive it. As well, if you interact with one part of one of the channels of communication, it does reflect on the rest. So right now it's still kind of ad hoc and siloed because we don't have the technology maturity, and because also I believe that companies have not invested enough there. But with generative AI, that build will become natural because you will not need to build everything from scratch. You will be able to use frameworks and deploy them in a more natural way. And
Right.
very soon, I believe you will not even look at your phone. It will be like basically an AR device in one way or another that will give you the information as you need it, sound or like text
Right.
or visual.
Right. So it's just like the smart glass, right? I'm wearing it, like all this information is going to plop in my glass, right? So fantastic.
I'm not
Like
sure if it's glass or if it's like something in our head directly, but we'll see.
yeah, too much like embedded chips in your head, right? So
Yeah.
we actually got one question coming in. I think it's quite relevant. In Indonesia, as traditional trade is the biggest market and online is still very small part of the sales, how do
Mhm.
you ensure the digital is important to be implemented and optimized? What's your thought on that?
I think people have to stop with this digital versus offline once and for all. There is no more digital versus offline. We all live in our phones. Please just open your, like how much time you spend on your phone per day. I would bet more than 4 hours at the very least. Add your all screens, it's probably you're gonna be at 7 hours easy. And that's I'm not even looking at Gen Z that spends even more time there. Basically, it's not about selling. It's about interacting with your consumer and customer and understanding what they're looking for and why they're looking for something. Then how you execute is just a matter of marketing. Do you execute on the ground or you execute on like digital? That really depends on where the opportunity is and what is the scale of it. Meaning that you have to define your strategy and your road to market depending on your own capabilities. Maybe digital is small, but maybe it's as a small company, it's enough for you, and that's where you should put all your focus. That's where it's more profitable for you. Or maybe it's the opposite. It's just too small for scale. You're a very big company. It's not really interesting to put too much emphasis on that. And that's where you would rely rather on marketplaces rather than build your own experience. Does it make sense to sell Coca-Cola on an e-commerce just on your own e-commerce? Does not make sense. People will not connect just to buy one Coca-Cola. It just doesn't make sense. So marketplaces have a role to play. Then you can find other roles in D2C as a manufacturer, but that you need to define depending on the market, the maturity level of the market, and the maturity level and investment that you are able to put as a company.
So if I rephrase like what you're saying in a way based on my understanding is, I think number one, there's actually no point to actually divide digital or not digital because like we are in digital. The device like you're doing is like you're spending at least 4 hours a day interacting with it. But it's not around just like the top of mind is like how you sell. I guess is when the user is interacting with the digital, with the device for 4 hours a day, how you actually want to take the time share of like being Coca-Cola or your brand with the customers. I need to be your top of mind because if you don't buy me, then you never think of me, then okay, so next time if you want to buy, you don't think of me, right? So I guess your recommendation is like you use the digital to engage the customer like almost like all the time, right? But
Yeah,
then like
as
when
much
the
as
moment
possible.
come in, yeah.
Exactly. So your competition is not your natural competition from before. Like if you say McDonald's versus Burger King, that's natural competition. But Netflix is your competition too. Like people want to stay home because they want to watch Netflix. Then what they want is to order online, and they will order through Grab or anything else. Then naturally, it's not Burger King anymore. It's actually the local joints that will deliver you the burger within 10 minutes, and not that one. And that is adapted to the meal at home occasion. So if you don't understand the link between all these elements, then you're decoupling your overall road to market strategy, and you're considering every channel separate while they are all linked as a customer journey. So how do you place the moment of consumption? How do you capture them? And how do you play the role of catalyst? Even if they don't buy your product, they basically use you in their daily language and so on and so forth to interact with other people, influencing basically the growth of your own product.
Right. So maybe we have like 6 more minutes to go, but like this is actually another probably $1 million questions. So a lot of time when people go and invest in the digital, it is about, okay, what is your ROI? Right? What is your KPI that you carry, right? So marketing historically talk about, okay, I'm going to optimize my media spend, right? So I've been measured by cost per click, cost per acquisitions, and I'm done. Downstream, the salespeople say, I'm not still selling. Based on what you just talked about, right? So if we actually say we want to advocate the fact that, hey, we are always top of mind for the customers, how do you see like is the right KPI to actually in our part of world, right? We need to manage our bosses. The boss say, look, okay, you
Mm-hmm.
spend so much money, and then what's the return?
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend like the people to talk about? Say if we want to move away from this whole direct like the attribution to the sales, or like you
Yeah.
will be able to talk through like the concept, right? But what is the KPI that the audience should go back to the management?
So for us, it's pretty simple. Uh, Business is reach and turn, basically how much people buy. So these are the two core kind of like concepts. How much share, how much turn do you drive? These two kind of levers define how much money you're going to make. So the more share, the more visibility, the more likely they will buy. Of course, that takes into consideration the right pricing, but more importantly, the right branding. So the products are wanted and they liked, right? So ultimately, it's linked together, but it's always about these two concepts. And if you bring it back to all marketing, it's always about reach and what is the conversion. So like trial is the first step. So how many people try it? How many people across your customer base have tried it once? How many people buy it more than once? And what is the level of kind of like a return that you need to bring? Like how many people, how many times they need to buy in order to make them a loyal customer. So by defining these KPIs for your own business, for your own road to market, you'll define what is the success story. But stop talking about like cost per click or cost per acquisition. It means nothing if you cannot drive repeated purchase. So start with the product adaptability to the market and start by defining what is your risk strategy. Once you define the risk strategy, the rest is basically just sub KPIs that boils down to the bigger thing.
Excellent. Fantastic. I hope that you are my manager that I can actually go and talk to. So it's as easy as that.
I'm not your manager, but I'm happy to talk to you anytime, Anthony, and to
Yes.
anyone. Please feel free to reach out to me.
Fantastic.
I'm quite reachable on LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic. So love it. We got 3 more minutes. So for the audience, like if you have the last question, please put it in. Yeah, so I guess like there was a question you answered online, which is like, what's the first step like for you to take to have like a good foundation management? So you talk about the hiring the people. Is there like a what kind of like the data maybe from a technical perspective, right? We have 2 more minutes, but from a technical perspective, like to democratize the data, maybe talk us through like what kind of technology, what kind of foundation you need to build. Obviously, you need to have a data scientist, right? The smart people to do the smart thing. But what kind of tool set that is actually a prerequisite into this that from your experience?
First thing first, build a strong master data management approach and simplify it as much as possible, because if you don't have that, your data will be siloed, and that's the most painful in our industry. No one kind of like covered it 100%, but the minimum is to define what is that gold standard, what is the level that is the minimum requirement in master data management in order to democratize access to data. Otherwise, the data will be kind of like siloed. You will look at 3 reports instead of 1, and you'll not be able to look up to compare apple to apple between channels because you just don't consider them the same way. So that's the first step. Second one is bringing the clean data in an organized way. So invest in your data lake house in the right way and bring the right capabilities. So before even talking about data scientists, this is the last person you will hire. If you don't build a data science team, build first data engineering and architecture team. This is the most important one. Once you define that foundation and you build it, then hire data analysts that will bring kind of like automate the reporting and bring the like value, extract value from it. Then the third level is you start data science with very simple analysis. You're not going into predictive yet, or you just advance towards that. But first you tackle basically like descriptive analytics. So that removes the day-to-day job of like most people that try to find information, and then you make it accessible, either through dashboards or through basically generative AI tools that link to your data warehouse, or through basically data exploration tools that could be even Excel with ODBC linked to the data warehouse, so that people can just simply get the information they need without asking anyone. So that's kind of like the one. Then after that, you go to the customer, you go to the market, you understand where is the value, and you can start working on predictive analysis, on advanced AI, and so on. Sorry, I have to leave
You have
for
to
the next
leave.
meeting.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks,
Apologies.
Kahil, very much. Appreciate
Thank you very
that.
much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So thanks everyone for joining. So that's the first session with our Tech Talk. Hopefully this is helpful for everyone. So enjoy it, and we'll be announcing the session 2 very shortly. Again, thanks for dialing in. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.